The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Yeah! Go Cowboys! This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw Dating, preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys, and broadcasting live from Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters at the Star. Now, your hosts, Jess Navarez, Aisha Morrison, Kelsey Charles, and Jane Slater.
Welcome in to Girls Talk, Boys Talk. I'm your host, Jane Slater, joined by Aisha Morrison. We've got Jess Navarez, and we have got Kelsey Charles joining us remotely. And I'm really excited. I love bringing on smart women onto the show. We already have a panel of 3 here that I get to sit next to during the week, but we've got Madelyn Burke. She is the Giants team reporter. I've got a lot of questions as it relates to Kayvon Thibodeaux. Is he going to be back? They have another edge rusher. He was their leading tackler last year. And then I'm so curious about what's going on with Kenny Golladay. Monster contract, fairly benched. We thought he was going to be a deep threat. They're going with Sills instead. So on Wednesdays, we love to preview the opponent. We're going to talk about it here, and then we'll ask her a bunch of questions. But Cowboys are 9-1 against the Giants since 2017. 6 of the 9 Cowboys victories have been by 14 points or more. Cowboys won both matchups in 2021 by a combined 39 points. The last time the Giants entered a matchup versus the Cowboys with a better record than Dallas was Week 7, all the way back in 2015. Now, I know there's been a lot of talk this week. It's one of my favorite predictable headlines. I think it was, God, who was it this week? He was on ESPN talking about Dak needed to learn some things from Cooper Rush when he came back. Look, I tend to disagree. We haven't seen Cooper Rush go back-to-back in career starts. Remember, he had the start last year. He had the start this year. I did ask Mike McCarthy this week, are you at all concerned that teams get enough tape on him, you're going to start to see his tendencies? He said, yeah, I mean, that's real. Interestingly enough, I did get this in my research packet from the NFL Network. Notable Cowboys starting QBs with their first 2 career games the last 20 seasons. Who would you think has the better record? I'll go around the table. Rush, Prescott, or Tony Romo?
By the tone of your voice, we're going to...
Rush, 2-0. Passing yards per game, 280. Romo had 277.
Get out of here,
3 touchdowns for Rush, and his 1 interception tied with Tony Romo. Passer rating, 93.6. Second only to Romo's 97.8.
Okay, but, this is amazing, and this is exactly why I always tell people, I'm like, you can't just take stats and, read off of it. I'm so guilty of this, but I'm like, it's hilarious just hearing that.
Yeah, I
and
know.
It's all true. It's 100% true. But, sure, he's played 2 games, but he looks amazing, so, I'm happy for him. But, yeah, that's the moment in time for sure. We should just hang that on his wall, make a plaque for him, because that can't last forever.
Well, and look, this Cowboys offense is not starting off as hot as they did last year. If you look at the offense, they're ranked 31st in the league with just 11.5 points per game. But, guys, that happens when you only scored 3 points in your first game. So I anticipate that this will improve, particularly because we got some good news today. Yesterday they decided to waive undrafted rookie Dennis Houston. And as I said on NFL Network today, in most cities you don't care about an undrafted rookie who's had, 2 catches since he's been here. But it said to us that they're opening up something on the roster, and that something very much feels like Michael Gallup, who they said they're giving a full slate this week. They wanted to see him get in another padded practice. He was working his way up into team drills, and I've said this for a long time. I know that they consider CeeDee Lamb their one. I have just watched Michael Gallup quietly get better every single year. And if you get the sort of production you get from Noah Brown this week, and then, of course, you get CeeDee Lamb, who we saw start to get going there in the fourth quarter, this could be really good for not only Cooper Rush, but this offense in general, Aisha.
Yeah, and we were talking about, last week, I felt like in the Bucks game, I really felt like they knew that the Cowboys didn't have like a vertical threat. So when you start talking about Michael Gallup, he does stretch the field. He is that guy, that down the field guy, use the boundary guy. So it should make CeeDee Lamb's job easier as well, because I'm seeing him get more success in the slot right now. So I think that is going to play, a role in both. And also Michael Gallup got some respect out here. So people aren't going to just be sitting there like, oh, let's just not worry about him. No offense to Noah Brown, but that's just how things get down. So yeah, I'm excited.
I also think too it's going to be interesting to see the amount of workload he gets as they do integrate him back into the offense, because I think we're so excited for the return that he's coming back that we're kind of losing sight here of he's not going to be as heavy of a presence at first as he will later on in the season. So I'm excited to see him back. First of all, I think he has a huge threat, especially when it comes to those third downs, which I just think he's your clutch player for those kind of things. And I think what's going to be interesting to see is how much more of a workload he gets week to week after he does return, because I don't expect to see a full Michael Gallup show come, the first week of his return post-injury.
Well, and yeah, Kelsey, it sounds like he is. Well, I was just going to say, and Kelsey, yes, to her point, I think it sounds like he's going to be on a pitch count coming back.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm just excited for me personally. Like, I think, Jane, you know this better than anyone, Michael Gallup's a great guy. And I think looking in this industry for a minute, you try not to become like fans of players, but you can't help it with a guy like Michael Gallup. And this is a person who we weren't even sure if he was going to be on this team last year, right? Yeah. And then he gets injured, and everyone's like, oh, well, that's the nail in the coffin. Like, he's definitely not coming back. And, as we all know, that's not how everything shook out. And honestly, good for him, because I think that he's been one of the most underrated receivers and players on this offense as a team for the last couple of years. How many times we talked about Michael Gallup being like trade bait, right? I mean, I just don't think that people have put the respect that he deserves on his name. And so I feel like this is a chance for him to say, like, listen, like, yeah, you don't have the guys who are the namesakes in the NFL on our roster right now, but like, just give CeeDee and I a chance to show you what we can do. And I feel like we're going to have some fun if they actually can make that come to fruition.
Absolutely. Well, just think how different they are from a mentality standpoint from guys we've had in the past. I mean, even just going back in recent years, Cole Beasley, he barks, which, by the way, how about him signing with the Tampa Bay Bucks?
I'm visiting with the Giants, too.
Right. Yeah. Beasley barks. Bryce Butler would even, talk his talk. And then, of course, Des Bryant. Terrence Williams was probably the quietest one of that group back in the day. And so this is, I remember talking to someone, one of the coaches, and they literally said this is one of the quietest rooms that they've had, which is why they really wanted to go out there and try and find some of these other dogs. I think there was some hope that maybe Jalen Tolbert might be that. But it sounds like, it sounds like they've answered the question on Jalen Tolbert. They were asking him to play 3 different spots on the field. He was coming back from injury, and it just felt like it was a lot. I get the sense that even with Dennis Houston coming back, which interestingly enough that I felt like other teams might have picked him up, but they didn't. He cleared waivers. He's on the practice squad. But you get the sense, obviously, because of Jalen Tolbert getting picked as high as he did, they're going to find a way for him to get on this roster eventually. Yeah. But, yeah, I think in terms of Cooper Rush getting some of these weapons back, it's huge because especially if you get this running game going, which we'll talk about after we have Madelyn Burke here, who's going to join us after the break. I really want to get into the running game and what the vision is for it and how we saw just a glimpse of that last week. But ladies, let's go ahead and throw this one to a break. We've got Madelyn Burke from the Giants joining us on the phone because I know sometimes Cowboy fans don't get the time, sometimes we don't, to scout the opponent this early in the week, but she's going to give us all of that coming up. But first, Girls Talk, Boys Talk, brought to you by Jigsaw Dating, the official dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that 6th ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
Dear past, present, and future football watchers, you know why we're here. The football season is back! Woo! Woo! And since that's too amazing to miss a single second's worth, Pepsi is officially giving you permission to always put football first. Like, maybe those in-laws are back in town. Well, better hope they're football fans because your Sunday is completely booked. Long story short, crack open a Pepsi and don't let anything get between you and your football watching. With love, Pepsi, made for football watching. That's what I like.
Star Sports Tours is the only official fan travel partner of the Dallas Cowboys, offering exclusive game weekend travel packages with pre-game sideline access and photo ops with current players, cheerleaders, and Cowboy legends. You want to stay at a team hotel, attend the best tailgate party in Texas, tour the Star, and talk X's and O's with me, Everson Walls? With Star Sports Tours, you can. Visit cowboystravel.com to book your travel package today.
I'm Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. Blockchain.com is one of the most trusted ways to buy, sell, and trade crypto. Whether you're always on the go or stay closer to home, Blockchain.com is just a few taps away. Put the power of crypto in your pocket, so no matter where you are, you can trade on your terms and build a crypto portfolio to fit your life. For crypto pros, rookies, and anyone in between, Blockchain.com makes it easy to own a piece of the future. Blockchain.com, trusted by millions, trusted by America's team.
Welcome back to Girls Talk, Boys Talk, brought to you by Jigsaw Dating, the official dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. But first,
join former NFL players on our first game day minicamp presented by Invisalign. Drop the kids off at Ford Center on October 2nd from 11:30 to 3:30 while you watch the Dallas Cowboys and Washington Commanders game from your favorite restaurant at the Star District. To register your footballer for camp, just visit dallascowboys.com/academy.
all right, guys, what I love about this show is I've told you, not only do we have a female producer in Jasmine, we've got Kelsey, Charles, Aisha, Jess, and myself here, but I love that, I started off in this business back in 2004, and the press conference room didn't have a lot of smart females in football. And I've slowly seen over the years, particularly in the last 5, a lot of really great girls step up. And one of them, who I think is one of the brightest stars, is Madelyn Burke. She is the Giants reporter, host of the Giants postgame live on MSG. You can also catch her on NFL Network from time to time, and hoping to get you on our team at some point, Madelyn. But thank you for taking the time, because I know you do about 5 million shows. But I really want to be able to scout the opponent. Giants are a different team than what the Cowboys have faced in years past. Already as many wins in 2 weeks as they did through 7 weeks last season. They had an 0-3 start last year. Their first win didn't come until week 4. 2 wins, 2 close games. What's been the difference maker for them, Madelyn?
Well, when you put it that way, yeah, I mean, it has been a while. I mean, the Giants haven't had a 2-0 start since 2016 and really haven't had a record above 500 since 2016. So this is something that this organization used to be used to, but it's been a while since they've had this kind of consistent success. And again, we're early. It's only 2 weeks into the season, but starting strong, as you know, is always a good thing. And I think really, if you look at these 2 games, the key has been, number one, the defense, right? Wink Martindale's defense has been incredibly pivotal in the Giants' success, but also the fact that, these games are some of the games that the Giants would have lost in years past. I mean, they've come down to whether a field goal and it's just, a lucky moment for them, or kind of coming back out of the ditch, going into halftime down 13-0 in week 1 and then being able to fight their way back and stick together. And that stick-togetherness and that kind of fight and that commitment to seeing it through, a lot of that is just a hat tip to the coaching staff, to Brian Dable, to what this entire coaching staff has been able to instill in this really young group, and kind of getting them to buy in and believe in what they're doing. And having a couple wins doesn't hurt in that buy-in process.
Okay, yeah. So what do you think about how much they're getting Saquon involved now? It looks like he's kind of turning back the clock. He's obviously had some injuries this last couple of years that have kept him off the field. What do you feel like they're doing involving him, and what's the feel of how much he's going to be involved in this offense moving forward?
Yeah, Saquon's just an incredibly talented player, and it's just been really unfortunate the amount of injuries, as you mentioned, that he's had over the last couple of years. Last year especially, it took him 11 months to come back from that ACL injury. He gets back on the field. He's finally starting to feel comfortable in his body again, and just has that freak accident, rolls his ankle, and has an ankle injury to deal with. So that's a pretty big, mental hurdle on top of the physical hurdle there. But ever since the spring, Saquon has been excited, eager, healthy, and also just expressing just how good he finally felt in his body. Has been so far removed from that knee surgery, so far removed from these injuries. And he was so eager to get back on the field and show people, hey, the player the Giants drafted is still here and is still possible. And so week one, getting in there, getting almost 200 yards from scrimmage was a really, refreshing thing for him to see. Last week, of course, we saw he was a little bit more limited, 72 yards rushing, but of course, still very involved. And I think that, this team, this organization still looks at him as a really strong part of this offense. And what he's able to do when healthy, which he is healthy right now, is something special. And it's really fun to watch him kind of just commit to the run and move the chains a bit.
Hey, Madelyn, so I want to switch things over to the defensive side of the ball. After watching the Giants games, I think something that was really noticeable was the Giants defense commitment and physicality to getting those strips, making sure they're trying to force those turnovers and getting all of the fumbles. What would you say other than that is really one of the biggest threats that the Cowboys offense is facing with them?
Yeah, that's a great observation, too. They're really kind of focusing on getting takeaways. But also, Wink Martindale has said from the start he wants his defense to dictate. Rather than to react to what the offense is doing, he wants to force the offense to react to what the defense is doing. He wants to force the offense to adjust to what the defense is doing. And he's, disguising pressures. And, you'll see a safety in the A gap, and you'll say, okay, what is this? You see the personnel on the field, and it doesn't necessarily dictate what the coverage is going to be because the way he uses players and the versatility of a lot of these players. We've seen Jihad Ward on the edge. He's lined up at nose tackle when Leonard Williams went down last week. He's all over the field. Julian Love, another Swiss Army knife player who's all over the field. And I think having so many players on defense that can play so many positions has really helped just the versatility and the multiple looks of this Giants defense under Wink Martindale.
Okay, so Madelyn, I have to ask you, you just talked about dictating, play and not being reactive. Dare I say this franchise has been forced into a state of reactivity over the past couple of years. There really hasn't seemed to have been a lot of continuity. And I think, if I'm looking at the quarterback position, which has been a really big area of emphasis, a lot of ups and downs for Daniel Jones in his short career in the league. You have a coach like Dable who came from the Bills. You could credit him for the creation of Josh Allen into what he is today, which is nothing short of an incredible feat. And he's an awesome player. So I saw a comparison this week to Cooper Rush being the backup quarterback within Daniel Jones being the guy who plays like a backup quarterback. Do you feel like that's a fair analysis? And do you feel like having a guy like Brian Dable in the building is going to be really helpful in the true development of Daniel Jones?
I think that, yes. To answer your question, yes, Brian Dable will absolutely be helpful, as well as the offensive coordinator, Mike Kafka, who's widely credited for the development of Patrick Mahomes, who's also pretty good at the quarterback position. And I think that, having both of those guys work with Daniel Jones will be extremely helpful for him. But listen, it's hard for any player, especially a quarterback, to grow in his role with so much change, and not just change in your offensive coordinator and your head coach, but change in the skilled players around you, change in your offensive line. There's been so much change around him that it's hard for the game to speed up for anyone, really, when you're readjusting and refocusing every once in a while. And I do think Daniel Jones has some really incredible talent, but again, all people are different people. And could he take that Josh Allen leap? Could he take that Patrick Mahomes leap? Perhaps, maybe. But again, it is early in the season. It is only week 2. And I think we've seen, some consistency with him so far, but there's a lot of room to grow and a lot of room to evolve throughout the course of the season. And I appreciate that this organization is giving him the opportunity to do that and saying, hey, we believe in you. We trust in you. We're going to ride with you. And let's see how this goes.
Obviously you were there, Madelyn, when it was Jason Garrett and Joe Judge, and there were just such horror stories. I mean, Mark Colombo was up there, and I remember one of the stories was about, making the guys run and how that didn't sit well with a lot of these grown men that feel like you're sort of treating them like college students. I saw this interesting quote from Julian Love, basically from Brian Daboll, that he wants guys to send it. In other words, play fast, free, without worrying about playing perfect. They're open to winning and learning. And it feels so much like when Dan Quinn got here with the defense, the mentality on that side of the ball at least changed. And these guys started mimicking the coaches. I know there's a situation with Kenny Golladay, which we'll get into here in a little bit. But have you noticed a different vibe around there? And is that the reason why we're seeing a success from this Giants team early on? And can we trust that success?
I think that is a perfect quote with what Julian Love said earlier about, hey, he wants us to send it. It's like what he said to Daniel Jones. He wants him to let it rip. And he wants these players not to be afraid to make mistakes, especially on the practice field, but in general, right? If you're so worried about doing everything perfectly, you're not going to try to step out of your comfort zone. You're not going to try something new. You're not going to say, I wonder if this is going to work, because you're so worried that it won't work, and you're so worried about making the mistake and what the repercussions are about that mistake. Brian Daboll wants his players to play free, play comfortably, and that includes saying, hey, you know what, I understand there will be mistakes along the way, but it's growth, right? It's like when a toddler's learning to walk. He's going to fall quite a bit, but then you got to learn to walk. You can't learn to walk without falling. It's the same thing. You want to learn, you want to grow as a football player, as a team, as a new offense. You're going to fall a few times. You're going to make a few errors, but that's okay, because in the grand scheme of things, you're playing free and you're not worried about making the mistake. You're focusing on making the play.
I want to follow up real quick, and I was a little confused that they signed Jaylon Smith again, because I didn't get the sense that experiment went well last year. Was this a desperation sign, Madelyn? Because as you talked about, they are loading up safeties there in the box. They've shown like a 6 DB front. I mean, Wink has been getting pretty creative. But if you're looking to slow down the run in Dallas, obviously it makes sense to sign a linebacker like Jaylon Smith. Do we anticipate seeing him Monday? Because I know he's on the practice squad. Is there a chance we see him up on Monday?
There's always a chance, right? There's always a chance. Who knows? They are, again, the Giants are still dealing with and sorting through a few injuries. He did play last year, and he played pretty well with the Cowboys too. And so whether it's bringing him back for that effect or bringing him back to, just to be a part of the preparation, that remains to be seen. But, he was back there today. He's back on the practice field. I think, it's early in the week to decide or to decipher whether or not he will be. But he is wearing number 54, which is Blake Martinez's old number this time around. So last year
that was his number in Dallas.
45, and now he's wearing 54.
He's probably excited about that.
Yeah, he is. That was his number in Dallas, Madelyn, so I'm sure he is excited. A guy that just didn't watch a lot of tape in Dallas, according to a lot of my people. And you noticed it when you saw him play. It was so reactive versus proactive.
Oh, the business. So I wanted to.
I wonder if they can work that into his contract.
Yeah, right. Like Kyler.
Oh no, y'all are shady
Man.
today.
I'm not being. That's. Go ask anyone.
I mean, it's true. I mean, if it's true, it's true. I'm just like, dang. So I wanted to ask you about what is the feel for Evan Neal? I was taking a look at some of the snaps he got at right tackle. It doesn't look like there's really any particular depth behind him. So it sounds like there's a lot of responsibility on this young guy to come in and perform well. It looks like he's having a little bit of trouble with some of the speedy edge rushers. What is the energy in the building with like his improvement and how he's playing so far?
Well, I mean, he is a rookie. It's only 2 games into his career. I mean, he's a huge guy, naturally gifted. Mm-hmm. He's also somebody who prepares and takes care of his body like a vet, right? He, not just doing the tedious calisthenic work and working all that. He loves, always in the ice bath afterwards. He's just very professional with the way he approaches his craft and his practice and his taking care of himself. And I think what I would point to also is, look at Andrew Thomas, the Giants left tackle, who at the beginning of his career people were thinking, they got the wrong guy.
He's
This
so good.
guy is trash, blah, blah, blah. And now through the first 2 weeks of the season, he's the highest graded offensive tackle according to PFF. So that growth kind of comes with playing time and comes with experience. And, it is early in Evan Neal's career, but he is focused and determined, and he says and does all the right things. And I think this organization believes in him, and it's going to give him the opportunity, like we talked about earlier, to say, hey, you know what, you're going to make a few mistakes, but I'm going to let you grow from those and let you learn from those and believe in you. And so I think we will see Evan Neal continue to evolve as a player as the season goes on.
Also, something I wanted to ask you, Madelyn, because I think Cowboys Nation can relate to this feeling as far as penalties go. I know that's been a very big thing for the Giants, really on both sides of the ball, but defensively specifically, the Giants having 15 penalties the last 2 games for a total of 112 yards. What have you seen out of them that says they're getting more disciplined on that side of things and trying to avoid more of those penalties that really could have cost them the game both times around?
Yeah. I mean, and some of those penalties are tricky, right? Like if they're calling the offensive pass interference on a pick route, it's like, well, how? Because that's the design of the route versus, some things that are just a little bit messy and need to be cleaned up. And I think that's also just a reflection of being early on in the season with a new, system and all of that. And I, hope that they will clean it up. I do believe they will. But I think it's just kind of early and getting the kinks out and trying to figure out, okay, let's make sure we're all on the same page here. Again, I think that this is just one of those things that as the season goes on, hopefully this is a point of emphasis that they shore up, because, I get it. Sunday is laundry day. We want to air it all out there with the flags, but it's not good for this team.
We can relate over here in Dallas.
That's like a phenomenal saying. I do want to stay on that side of the ball, though, because I see this Cowboys team, and a lot of people have been trying to piece together, the offensive weapons that they do have, right? And it's a lot of guys that you've got a couple that you know the names of, but a few that you really don't. Well, the Giants have a couple good names, right? And some people that they paid in the offseason. Kenny Golladay is one of them. They brought him over to this team. And he was seemingly limited last week. So I'm kind of curious as to what insight you have into that. It looks like they're going with guys, a former collegiate quarterback. Kadarius Toney, you've heard about him. But what's going on with this wide receiver core, and what can this Cowboys defense expect?
Yeah, so Brian Daboll kind of addressed this earlier this week in talking about just the way that they're moving things around in that way. He said, he wants players to be able to earn playing time. And David Sills, for example, is the guy who led receivers in catches last week. In snaps last week, and he was on the field quite a bit. And he's a guy who has been a perennial practice squad star, just kind of trying to make the 53, not last offseason, but the offseason prior. He flew down to Charlotte, North Carolina, and spent the entire summer just as Daniel Jones's shadow, just trying to say, when can I work out with you? Let me catch some balls. Has put in a lot of work to kind of build up, and it's shown. And I think the coaching staff has seen that, and I think they're saying they want to set a precedent that they are going to put the players on the field who are, it's not a scholarship, right? It's not just because this is your contract you're going to play. Just because we drafted you, you're going to play. It's, yes, this is, we drafted you, we paid you this or what have you, but also we want to see the work, the effort, and the ability to help this Giants team win. And the players each week who are the best fit for that are going to be rotated in and out. And, the personnel in week 2 is very different than the personnel in week 1, and I anticipate it'll be very different in week 3. And that's just kind of the way that Brian Daboll and this coaching staff are doing things. And, Kenny Golladay talked about it earlier today. He was disappointed. He said, hey, I came here to play. I get that. That's what any football player would say. He wants to be on the field. No player wants to be on the bench. But, again, if this is, off to a 2-0 start for the Giants, so far, it seems to be working, and we'll see how this evolves and continues.
This is why I love having you on the show, Madelyn. I'm taking notes because I have Monday Night Football coverage for NFL Network, and I'm like, that's a good hit. That's a good hit. I'm going to research that. Thank you so much. I'm obviously such a huge fan of yours. I can't wait to see you this weekend. My hotel is within walking distance from Madelyn, so We're going to have good times.
Cannot wait.
You are literally,
So
they call me the Gronk of the NFL Network. You're like the Gronk of New York. So I can't wait for us to Yo Soy La Fiesta, Madeline.
Oh, my God. I'm so looking forward to it. Thanks
All right.
so much for having me, ladies.
You can
Bye.
follow
Bye.
Madelyn Burke at Madelyn, MadelynBurke. She's a great follow, knows her stuff, and we'll have you back on again if you are interested, Madelyn.
Anytime. Always happy to join you.
Thanks, Queen. All right.
Thanks so
Well,
much.
I hope you guys got as much information about the opponent as I did right there. We're going to break down the run game when we come back from the break. Some interesting nuggets from running backs coach Skip Peete about the vision that he has for his backs and what he wants that to mirror from past backs in the past. That is all coming up on Girls Talk, Boys Talk, brought to you by Jigsaw Dating, the official dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
Did you get to work on time?
Yeah, but I just realized it's Sunday.
Little Sweet says head on home. Dr. Pepper's on its way. So sweet, unique. Baby, there's nothing better. I bet you've probably done something that deserves a Dr. Pepper. Did you invest your nest egg in an NFT?
Yeah, and I don't even know what that is.
It's a non-fungible token. Everyone's done something that deserves a Dr. Pepper.
Todd thought it would be secure to jog in the cheetah savanna. Todd believed the big cat repellent he bought online was reliable. And now, Todd is trying to be faster than this cheetah that can run 80 miles per hour. But the good news is, Todd has AT&T 5G that is fast, reliable, and secure. And he learned the best thing to do is stop running and toss her the backpack with the beef stew. AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure. It's not complicated.
5G requires compatible plan and device. 5G may not be available in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Brace yourself for an existential question. Has your butt been having enough fun lately? Have you been treating it well? Has it been going places? If not, then it's about time you start using SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the best way to get your butt tickets to live events. Just ask the thousands of other butts who have rated it the #1 ticketing app. So what are you waiting for? Download the app now or visit SeatGeek.com to get tickets to sports, concerts, and live events and make your butt happy. SeatGeek. Get your seat in a seat.
What do you call a group of grown men and women with their faces painted silver and blue who get together every week to share a 3-hour-long ritual of jumping, singing, and toasting Miller Lite in 10-gallon hats while yelling, "How about them Cowboys?" You call it Miller Time in Dallas. Here's to the Cowboys. Here's to the original light beer. It's Miller Time. Celebrate responsibly. 2021 Miller Brewing Company, Fort Worth, Texas.
All right, well, Dallas committed to the run against the Bengals and came up with 107 yards, but it really helped the passing game, and specifically Noah Brown. If you guys remember, it was Brown who put himself in a position having Pollard there. It was a 28-yard grab on a 3rd and 10, thanks to Noah Brown there. And then, of course, Pollard was able to punch it in. I caught up with running backs coach Skip Peete after the game in the locker room because they have talked about committing to the run. They kept telling us what we see for this offense is what you saw in the joint practices. So here's what Coach had to say about getting that run game going and where they want it to go. Coach, how did it feel to get that run game going tonight?
No, it felt good. We figured that going into the game we were going to have to run the ball a little bit better than we did a week ago. And, obviously against a defense like they have, it's going to be some dirty runs at times, and then just stick with it. And then over time, eventually, you're going to have 1 or 2 that may pop.
Why do you think you guys were so effective tonight?
I don't know. It's basically the same plays we've been running. You had opportunity to run them last week, and we stuck with it this week. And 2 of them kind of got out there. There's several that were, I think, 8 or 9, but that's kind of how the game goes. Sometimes it's going to be 3, 3, 3, 3, 10. But, we stuck with it and understood what the plan was for this week, and it worked out for us.
I know you guys have been talking about the importance of having Zeke and Tony Pollard on the field. Was tonight an example of why that works?
Well, yeah, I've always felt that if you have guys who have 2 different styles, it kind of presents a little bit different look to the defense. Tony's obviously a little quicker than Zeke, but if you run the same plays, it kind of throws off angles of the guys that are coming down to make the play, like safeties and corners of that nature. So I think that happened a couple times in the game. But I just think, it was all the players that did a good job. They understood what we had to do this week, and they went out and did it.
Appreciate it, Coach. All right. Well, Skip really wants to see in Dallas what we saw from Marion Barber and Felix Jones. Think the Raiders, who had Napoleon Kaufman and Tyrone Wheatley. One gives you acceleration. The other gives you a physical presence as a ball carrier, which, by the way, on NFL Network today, I called it Napoleon Dynamite.
Heard that.
Good times. Yeah.
Incredible.
Long week.
Bye.
But yeah, I would imagine this is an opportunity because through the first 2 weeks, the Giants have played two of the league's best in Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey. They gave up 93 the first week, 146 the second. And I think if you can get Michael Gallup in the game, you've got Noah Brown going. That takes some of the pressure off of CeeDee Lamb. You're having to pick your poison again, which is when this team was so successful a few years back. Did you like what you saw from the run game, Aisha?
Yeah, I like that they kind of did a trade-off, I guess you want to say, where TP would have a full series and then Zeke would have a full series. What I'm hoping for is that the situational running is better as far as picking which back is the best for that situation. I feel like with this offensive line, this is a young offensive line, especially on the left side. Some of the slower developing plays are not things that I think seem to be successful with the Cowboys right now, just because the pass blocking is a gradual thing. So I'm looking at the run game and I'm like, okay, who is hitting the hole? Like, with this specific defensive line, who's hitting the hole at the point of attack the fastest? And I think in some situations you can say that's Tony Pollard. Like, they can't stop this guy at the edge. Let's keep going at them. Like, I'm really hoping that they continue to play the matchup game in this game and see, okay, which guy's having more success here, which guy's having more success here. But I do like the fact that they are being true to their word of giving Tony Pollard more touches and getting him involved in different ways. Obviously that toss was crazy. I mean, you're on the sidelines, you heard him, he was like, hey, give it to me, man. They should have gave it to him. But I do like they should have even. But I like some of the creativity that they are showing there and also really letting them kind of play off each other. It seems like Zeke's going to be that guy that when you have that short yardage, just go ahead, let him, ground and pound, get these guys, get these defensive linemen and linebackers to come up and be tired towards the end of the game. This is, I think, in turn, is going to help this offense, continue to run the ball and hopefully win time of possession for a game, because that's something that they have lost the battle on this last two games. Maybe this also opens up your offense more, but also gives your defense a little bit more time to rest as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's key, too, is making sure that the defense isn't on the field the entire game and eating up that clock and that time of possession more and more. I mean, Zeke was averaging 3.5 yards a carry against Cincinnati. Tony Pollard was averaging 4.8 yards a carry. So, to me, it's effective. Yes. And the difference between week 1 and week 2 was, we were saying Zeke needs more than 10 touches, which that's what he had week 1. He had 15 during the Cincinnati game, and then Tony Pollard had 9. So, I think it's very key for the Cowboys to establish the run game with this specific game, because you do have Barkley on the other end of the offense. They're trying to establish the run with Barkley, and I mean, it is scary watching some of the tape back of what he's able to do when he can pound the pocket. So the longer you can really...
He cheats angles. I mean, if you were looking at, he was
it's his legs.
There was on one particular play, the tackler had him, but the way he cheated that angle... That's what makes him
His lower
concerning.
body is so heavy that I'm sure he is hard to tackle. And it's so crazy to think
and he's fairly fresh given some of the injuries, if you think about it.
Well, and the point is, too, the longer you can keep our offense, the Cowboys' offense, on the field with that run game, do not give them the chance to establish their run on the other side of things. Kels, what do you think?
I mean, honestly, I think that we just heard from the source directly where this is one of the first times that Barkley's been healthy in a while. And I think when he first came into the league, there were a lot of comparisons about, oh, well, do you think he's better than Zeke? And his body has betrayed him and not allowed him to be a strong competitor in that fight. And listen, Jane, I think you have a great point. Because of those injuries, you could kind of consider him relatively fresh still, fresh legs. That's scary in a running back, you guys. I look at the tenure and the lifespan of a running back. They start off strong and they kind of taper off. That's why you hear people saying, I don't want to pay my running back again. It's the exact opposite with wide receivers. So I think it's definitely something to be watching and looking at this upcoming game, because he could very easily be very scary.
Yeah, Ezekiel Elliott has averaged 44.4 rushing yards over his last 10 games, fewer than 100 rushing yards, and 14 straight. That's his longest streak in his career. It's kind of wild. He's gone 4 straight games without a touchdown, his longest streak since weeks 12 through 16 in 2020. Love giving people water cooler stuff there. So, yeah, I don't know what to tell you if you're looking which running back am I starting this week. I definitely think that Pollard gives you the burst. And again, he's the guy that you want to accelerate, and you've got Zeke doing all the dirty stuff, the dirty runs, the pass pro. He's your physical bruiser. But yeah, I think they're going to rely heavily on this run game, particularly, like I said, against this Giants offense that I think when you look at what Christian McCaffrey was able to do last week and just their run game in particular, 146 rushing yards, I think that they can be effective if they stick to the run again.
Yeah, and their linebackers will get caught looking in the backfield. You make them have to come up and tackle, but I really think also too they're flying to the ball like we were talking about. Like they are playing free, so do be looking for some of those defensive linemen to get upfield too much and to take advantage of that. They're also blitzing more than what I think they typically do. They're blitzing because they're having trouble getting pressure from that defensive line by itself, just rushing forward with Thibodeaux being out, with those gentlemen being out, Dexter Lawrence being out. So we'll see also, too, if the Cowboys can take advantage of, like, if Cooper Rush can make them pay when they send more guys. Like, that's going to get them to back off as well and, maybe bring some guys out of that box as well.
And I'm particularly interested in seeing how Kayvon Thibodeaux is going to go if he gets a start. Because remember, we had lofty expectations for Micah Parsons. He had a dynamic preseason. Remember, he didn't want to come out of that game against the Steelers. But in his first game against Tom Brady, he did struggle. Now, Kayvon Thibodeaux is not facing off against a Dak Prescott. He's facing off against a Cooper Rush. But I am going to be interested to see how they look there. I'm also going to be very fascinated because Wink Martindale came from the Ravens. Obviously, what you're seeing from Dan Quinn defensively. But you heard Madelyn talk about they're not only are they mixing things up from an offensive standpoint, and I love the fact they're making players earn it, right?
Yeah.
But the different looks that they're showing week in and week out, that's got to be a little tough as you're looking at the tape and prepping to get a sense of what they're going to show you from a defensive standpoint. So I think this game is, and if you look at these two teams, it's interesting right now, it's come down to the kicking game, and it's also come down to their defense.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of been the story for the Cowboys. I think this is going to be, as much as we've talked about the NFC least and how, I know you guys all watched the Eagles game in Jalen Hurts, what he was able to do with A.J. Brown. All of a sudden, I'm finding this division more intriguing.
Yeah.
And that's why I think this Monday Night Football game is going to be real interesting.
And you know what's interesting, too, is usually I don't have this on my notes, but there's a little section that says similarities between the Giants and the Cowboys right now. And yeah, first of all, the defense has really carried the teams for both of the Giants and the Cowboys in week 1 and week 2. You're seeing that on the Giants side as well. The key is to establish the run for both of these offenses, and then special teams has been huge for them.
Sure. So this game hopefully tips it because looking at the Giants, it looks like they will allow returners to kind of get busy. You had Kyle Phillips. He had 4 returns for 62 yards, averaged 15.5 yards a return. Chuba Hubbard tore them up, 3 returns for 75 yards. Trenton Cannon kind of got at them as well. Like, we possibly may see the turn of the tide with Kevontae Turpin this game. But also, his returns last game were huge. Even though it wasn't a whole bunch of yards, it was like 34 yards.
He just needs to hold the ball.
Let's look for him.
That is key.
Yeah, but let's look for, I think since we're talking about how similar both of these teams are, what may be the difference maker is the special teams this week.
Yeah.
And particularly, I think the one thing they've got to look to as we wrap this one up, Kelsey, the Giants have been winning close games late, outscoring their opponents 7-3 in the final 2 minutes. So you don't want to get this one down to the wire.
That sounds so crazy. Daniel Jones is Tom Brady now. Don't give him 2 minutes.
Exactly. So I think they're putting their kicker in a good position too. Their kicker has been lights out. When I was looking at, let's see what I had for their kicker. He had 4 field goals, 13 points in the Carolina win. He had a 36-33 in the first quarter, but a 51-56 in the fourth. Guess who had the 50-yard last week? Brett Maher. So it is interesting that they're trusting their kickers in this one.
Money Maher.
Exactly. Well, tomorrow we'll be coming to you right out of the locker room where we are likely to hear from Micah Parsons, who reporters that were in there today, they switched the locker room time on me, guys. Full disclosure. So I was an hour behind today. But it sounded like Micah Parsons possibly was getting some rehab. But we'll talk tomorrow. We'll see how he's feeling. And then obviously we'll talk to Ezekiel Elliott and get a little bit more into that run game. And it's going to be a fun one on Monday. Yeah. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Madelyn Burke, for joining us. And we will see you on Thursday.
Bye, Kelsey.
Bye.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!